Dad, that woman is still outside. Oliver Grant looked up from the lock on Bluebird Corner Cafe's front door. What woman? Lucy pointed toward the side window. The one under the awning. She was there before we started putting the chairs up. Oliver crossed the darkened cafe and looked through the glass. Snow had begun to settle along Burlington's sidewalks beneath the narrow awning beside the building. A woman sat close to the brick wall with an old canvas bag between her shoes. Her coat was too thin for the weather, and she kept rubbing her hands together inside the sleeves. How long has she been there? I don't know. While Oliver reached for the side door handle, stay inside, he had barely opened the door when the woman lifted her head. Oliver stopped. The hair was shorter, the face was older and tired, but he remembered the small scar near her left eyebrow. Audrey, she stared at him through the falling snow. Oliver Grant. Lucy appeared behind her father. Dad. Oliver stepped outside. Audrey Bell, we went to school together. He turned back toward the open door. Come inside. You're freezing. I'm all right. You're shaking. Audrey looked toward the busy street, as though she were considering another option. Oliver did not wait for her to argue. Just come in and get warm. She picked up the canvas bag and followed him through the side door. Oliver pulled a chair near the radiator. Sit there. Lucy brought over a clean towel. While Oliver went into the kitchen, he returned with a bowl of chicken soup, bread, and a mug of coffee. He placed them in front of Audrey. Eat before it gets cold. Audrey wrapped her hand around the mug. First, thank you. Lucy sat across from her. I'm Lucy. Audrey, you knew Dad when he was a kid. We were in high school together. Lucy looked at Oliver. Did he have hair? Oliver pointed toward the kitchen. Go check whether we turned the dishwasher off. Lucy grinned and left the table for the first time. Audrey smiled. Oliver sat down beside her. I haven't seen you since my family left Burlington. That was junior year. You remember you disappeared without saying goodbye. My father got a job in Pennsylvania. We left in 4 days. Audrey nodded and took a spoonful of soup. Oliver waited until some color returned to her face. What brought you to this block? I didn't know this was your cafe. I didn't think you did. I chose the area because people were still around. Church Street remained busy long after most neighborhoods went quiet. There were restaurants, buses, and pedestrians moving between shops. Audrey had been sitting there since late afternoon. She had chosen the crowd deliberately for 2 hours. She wanted to see how people treated a woman who appeared to have nothing they wanted. Dozens had passed him, avoided looking at her too, dropped money near the bag. Without speaking, a restaurant manager asked her to move farther from his entrance. Then Oliver had recognized her. The meeting had not been part of Audrey's plan. A faint vibration came from inside her canvas bag. Audrey glanced down. Her emergency phone displayed a short message from Marcus Reed, the investigator overseeing her security site. Blue compromised. Do not return call. When private, the discreet apartment prepared for Audrey was no longer safe. Oliver noticed her expression. Is something wrong? She slipped the phone back into the bag. The place I plan to stay tonight is no longer available. Do you have someone you can call? Yes, but he's outside the city and the roads are getting worse. Oliver looked toward the snow, striking the window. You're not going back outside. I can wait here until he reaches me. That could take hours. Lucy returned from the kitchen. The dishwasher is off. Oliver nodded. Audrey stood. I've already taken enough of your time. Lucy looked from Audrey to the ceiling. What about Mom's painting room? Oliver turned toward her. The room upstairs. Lucy said, nobody sleeps there. Audrey immediately shook her head. I can't take a family room. It has a bed and its own entrance. Lucy said, we don't live up there. Oliver remained quiet. The studio above the cafe had belonged to Hannah. She had painted there before Lucy was born, after Hannah died in a highway collision 3 years earlier. Oliver locked the room and used it only to store supplies. Lucy had never asked him to open it for anyone, just for tonight. She said. Oliver looked at Audrey. The studio has outside stairs and a separate lock. I'll need to see your ID. That's reasonable. Audrey handed him her driver's license. Audrey Bell Carroll. Oliver recognized Bell, but Carroll meant nothing to him. He returned the card. I'll show you the room. The studio still held Hannah's old easel, brushes, and 2 landscapes. A narrow bed stood against one wall. Oliver checked the heater, smoke alarm, and the carbon monoxide detector connected to the building's alarm system. He opened the exterior door and showed Audrey the landing. If any alarm sounds, use these stairs. Don't come through the fire door into the cafe. Lucy removed a blue quilt from cedar chest. Mom made this one. Audrey helped her spread it over the bed. A photograph on the shelf showed Hannah standing beside Oliver on the cafe's opening day. She looks happy. Audrey said she was. Oliver answered. He placed a spare key on the table. We'll make another plan in the morning. After Oliver and Lucy left, Audrey locked the door and called Marcus. He answered immediately. "Are you safe?" "Yes." Where above a cafe on Church Street silence followed the observation ended 2 hours ago. "I know the safe apartment was entered with an access credential connected to Preston's office. We're preserving the camera records. How soon can you secure another location? 48 hours. Possibly less. I could drive to you now. But the interstate is slowing. No, stay with the evidence. Audrey, I know the cafe owner of the studio has a separate entrance. And working alarms, you found a hotel. No, you accepted a room from someone you met on the street, someone I knew before Cedarbridge existed. Marcus was quiet. Does he know who you are? He knows my name. That was not my question. No. He doesn't know. Audrey looked at Hannah's photograph. She had gone to Church Street to test the kindness of strangers. She had not planned to involve Oliver or his child. Now the apartment, meant to protect her, had been compromised, and the first person who treated her with dignity had given her the one room he had kept closed for 3 years. "What is the cafe called?" Marcus asked. "Bluebird Corner." Another pause. "That building is part of Harbor Row." Audrey looked toward the floor. "What Cedarbridge purchased it 8 months ago." The woman sleeping above Oliver's cafe owned the company, trying to clear his block, and before the week ended, the secret she had hidden from him would place his business, 18 families, and Lucy's future directly in Preston Shaw's hands if quiet courage still matters. Subscribe to Dad's Soul Stories and stay with the story. The next morning, Audrey came downstairs before 6. Oliver was preparing coffee while Lucy ate toast near the kitchen. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Better than I expected. Has your contact found somewhere else?" "Not yet." Oliver gestured toward a table. "Sit down." Audrey explained that she had left a controlling relationship and was helping examine a property dispute. The apartment she had intended to use had been compromised, and she needed to remain near Harbor Row until a city hearing 18 days away. She did not mention Cedarbridge. She did not mention that she controlled most of it, but she did tell Oliver that the situation could bring unwanted attention to the cafe. "I can leave today," she said. "I don't want your daughter involved in something she didn't choose." Oliver studied her. "Is anyone likely to come here looking for you? Possibly. Are they violent?" "No, the man I left uses contracts, pressure, and people who depend on him for their jobs. That doesn't make him harmless." "No." Oliver looked toward Lucy. "You should tell me. If that changes, I will." Audrey offered to rent the studio for 2 weeks. Oliver wrote a simple agreement covering the dates, the amount, and either person's right to end it early. Audrey paid in cash. He returned part of what she offered. "This covers the room. I can pay more." I set the rate. She accepted the money without arguing. Audrey also asked for work. Oliver had her complete temporary employment paperwork and an online food safety course before allowing her near the kitchen. By the second afternoon, she was taking orders. By the fourth, she could operate the espresso machine without overflowing a cup. She still could not make a heart in the foam. Lucy said the shapes looked like potatoes. Over the next several days, Audrey became part of Bluebird Corner's routine. She learned which customer wanted cinnamon and which one complained if his toast was brown on both sides. She helped Lucy repair the torn ear of a stuffed rabbit and did not take offense when Lucy said the stitches were uneven. Margaret Keller came every Thursday morning. She was 71, widowed, and living on a fixed income in apartment 2B behind the cafe. One Friday, she reached for her wallet and frowned. "I left my cash envelope at home." Oliver placed her eggs and coffee on the counter. "Pay me next week. I still owe you for Tuesday. Then pay me for both." Mrs. Keller lowered her voice. "I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's breakfast on account." He wrote the amount into a small notebook and served the next customer without drawing attention to her. Audrey watched Mrs. Keller carry the plate to her table. You could have told her not to pay. That would have made her feel worse. "So you write it down. She pays when she can." Oliver turned back to the grill. "People need food. They don't need to be embarrassed while they eat it." Audrey remembered that sentence. A business report appeared on the television above the pastry case. Preston Shaw stood beside a rendering of Harbor Row. Glass apartments rose where the brick building now stood. The report described Cedarbridge Development Group as a privately held development company valued at more than $4 billion. Preston promised new jobs, modern housing, in a better commercial district. Audrey turned away from the screen. "Oliver noticed you know him." "Yes." "Is he the man you left?" "Yes." Oliver did not ask another question. In front of Lucy later that morning, Audrey studied a Cedarbridge notice lying beside the register. "The tenant review still isn't complete." Oliver looked over. "You can tell that from the notice." "No." From the hearing schedule and the acquisition language, you know a lot about their process. I told you I was helping examine a property dispute before Oliver could ask more. The front door opened. Cole Barrett entered carrying 3 folders. Cole managed the Harbor Row redevelopment for Cedarbridge. His overcoat was spotless despite the slush outside. Mr. Grant Cole placed the documents on the counter, a revised offer for the remaining 14 months of your lease, a landlord inspection notice, and copies of maintenance concerns submitted to the city. Oliver opened the second folder. Boiler, ventilation, plumbing, and electrical load. Cedarbridge owns an old building. We have responsibilities. My kitchen equipment passed inspection 6 months ago. Then this should be painless. Cole looked toward Audrey. You're hiring people you find outside now. Oliver closed the folder. Her name is Audrey. I didn't ask. No, you made up the rest without asking. Cole's expression tightened. He lowered his voice. Take the offer. You can move somewhere newer. Lucy, get stability. You stop carrying 18 other families on your back. Their tenant call their delays. Oliver pushed the folders toward him. Send the inspection dates in writing. Include every contractor and every area they intend to enter. You think paperwork protects people. It shows who did what. Cole gathered the folders. You have a week to reconsider the offer. After he left, Audrey looked toward the apartments behind the cafe. Does he speak to everyone that way? Only when they say no. That evening, Audrey met Marcus inside a parking garage several blocks away. He handed her copies of Cedarbridge's contractor records. 3 payments were routed through a consulting company tied to Cole's brother-in-law. Anything connecting Preston, not directly. He is pushing the project forward before the audit. Yes. Audrey handed Marcus the notices from the cafe, freeze demolition, boiler work, and every safety-sensitive activity at Harbor Row. Preserve the emails and access logs. Preston will know someone above. Cole intervened. Let him know the work stopped. Do not tell him why Marcus studied her. Oliver still believes you're only a shareholder. I haven't told him that much, yet you told him there could be pressure. That was what he needed to protect Lucy. Marcus closed the folder. He gave you a room. He gave you work. He deserves more than the minimum required for safety. Audrey looked away. I know. Then tell him before Preston does. The following day, a customer recorded Audrey helping Lucy arrange drawings near the front window. The clip appeared on a neighborhood page with a caption about a widowed cafe owner giving work and shelter to a homeless woman by evening. The video reached Boston. Preston Shaw watched it twice. He paused on Audrey's face. For 3 weeks, she had avoided company hotels, formal meetings, and every employee he trusted. Now she was wearing an apron inside a building at the center of the project. He could not afford to lose. Harbor Row contained payments routed through contractors connected to Preston. If demolition began before Cedarbridge's quarterly audit, those costs could disappear into the next construction phase. If the work stopped, auditors would look backward. Preston called Cole. Why is Audrey Carroll working inside Grant's cafe? Cole did not answer immediately. I didn't know it was her. You do now. What do you want? Continue every lawful inspection. Increase the lease. Offer keep Grant occupied. And Audrey, do not threaten her. Do not touch her. And do not let her appear before the city beside those tenants. Preston arrived at Bluebird Corner. The next morning, he wore a charcoal suit and carried no snow on his shoes. Mr. Grant. Oliver looked up from the register. Preston Shaw. You recognize me. You're on every Harbor Row brochure. Preston turned toward Audrey. There you are. Lucy was working on spelling homework at a table near the kitchen. Audrey did not move. Preston addressed Oliver again. Miss Carroll has been under significant strain. I can arrange a private hotel and appropriate support. Oliver looked at Audrey. Do you want to leave with him? No. Oliver nodded. Then she isn't leaving with you. You have no idea what she brought to your door. Then explain it. Without deciding for her, Preston lowered his voice. You're a widower with a young daughter and a business inside a redevelopment property. You should be careful about people whose problems are larger than they appear. Oliver rested one hand on the counter. Is that advice or a warning? Take it as either. Preston left a business card beside the register. When you're ready to talk about protecting Lucy, call me. Audrey followed him into the alley. You tracked me. You appeared in a public video. You pushed the tenant buyouts forward before the review. I'm running the company while you conduct private experiments on sidewalks. Audrey's face changed. You knew I know more about you than anyone in that cafe. I issued a stop work order. Preston gave a small smile. You should ask whether Cole still believes your signature matters. He walked away. When Audrey returned, Oliver was waiting. Who are you? Inside Cedarbridge. I helped start the company. How much do you own? A large share. That is not a number. No. Oliver took out his phone. I searched your name. Audrey's public profile was limited. Cedarbridge's early records identified an A.B. Carroll as one of the founders. Recent company pages showed Preston and other executives. The few photographs of Audrey were more than 10 years old, taken before she withdrew from public appearances. One article described her as an early investor whose current holdings were private. Oliver placed the phone on the counter. Is that you? Yes. Why is the founder of Cedarbridge sleeping above my cafe? I'm examining what Preston and Cole have done with Harbor Road. Does Preston know Lucy is here every day? Yes. Is she in danger? I do not believe he would physically hurt her, but he may use inspections, money, or your lease to pressure you. You knew that before he walked in. I knew it was possible. Oliver looked toward his daughter. You should have told me sooner. Yes. Audrey offered to move to a secure apartment. Marcus had prepared. Oliver considered it. The hearing is 11 days away. Yes, you move when the apartment is ready. Until then, you use the outside stairs, and you tell me if anything changes. I will. And no more answers built to sound smaller than the truth. Audrey nodded. She had wanted to tell him everything. She was also afraid that once Oliver learned how much she owned, every kindness between them would become impossible to separate from the money. That fear did not excuse the delay. 3 nights later, Oliver and Lucy were closing the cafe when the building's linked alarm sounded. A red warning light flashed above the rear hallway. Oliver checked the panel. Carbon monoxide. His voice changed immediately. Lucy. Coat. Front door. His phone rang. Audrey was calling from outside. The alarm went off upstairs. I used the outside stairs. Stay across the street. Do not go back inside. Oliver led Lucy through the front door and called 911. He gave the dispatcher the building address, the number of apartments, and the location of the shared boiler room. The linked alarms were already sounding in the common areas. Oliver crossed to the exterior apartment walkway, staying in open air, and knocked on each door. Alarm. Everybody outside. Leave your things. Mrs. Keller did not answer. Oliver pounded harder. Mrs. Keller. A faint response came from the other side. He told the dispatcher her apartment number and moved back into open air. Firefighters arrived within minutes. Wearing breathing equipment, Oliver handed the incident commander a list of residents. Mrs. Keller is in 2B, she answered. But she hasn't come out. 2 firefighters went directly to her apartment. They found her confused near the kitchen and carried her outside. Paramedics placed an oxygen mask over her face. Lucy stood across the street inside the bookstore doorway. Is she going to be okay? Oliver crouched beside her. They're helping her. We have to let them work one by one. The remaining residents were accounted for after the building had been ventilated. Investigators found that part of the shared boiler exhaust had been removed for contractor measurements. A temporary connection had not been restored correctly, allowing exhaust to flow back into the building. Cedarbridge's automated emergency system notified its property management office. Cole arrived 20 minutes later. This may be an old maintenance failure, he told the fire captain. The removed section is new work. The captain replied. We'll investigate. The fire marshal already is. Oliver turned over the rear security footage and his maintenance records. No one called it sabotage that night. 3 days later, the preliminary report showed that the contractor had started before final technical approval and continued after Audrey's stop work order reached Cedarbridge's regional office. Mrs. Keller spent 1 night in the hospital. When she returned, Oliver carried her groceries upstairs. I heard you at the door, he said. I heard you too. She stopped outside her apartment. You remembered? I was in 2B. I keep an emergency tenant list behind the counter. Mrs. Keller nodded. Good thing you do. She squeezed his hand before going inside. Audrey watched from the walkway. Oliver had not run into the contaminated building. He had not pretended he could replace firefighters. He recognized the danger, moved people outside, and gave trained responders the information they needed. He was not reckless. He was dependable. Oliver now had every reason to take Lucy and leave Harbor Row. Would anyone have blamed him if he did? Preston planned to make leaving almost impossible to refuse. 2 mornings later, Preston entered the cafe with an attorney. The attorney placed 2 folders on a table. The first contained a lease buyout far above market value. Cedarbridge would cover relocation costs, reserve a future retail space for Bluebird Corner, and establish a $250,000 education trust for Lucy. Oliver read the figure twice. The second folder contained a proposed witness statement. Its language was careful. Oliver would confirm that he had never personally heard Preston order unsafe work. He would state that Audrey had depended on him for housing and employment. He would confirm that he had no independent proof of her authority when she first criticized Cedarbridge. Each statement could be defended on its own together. They would make Audrey appear unreliable and dependent. The attorney spoke the documents or separate the company is exploring a complete resolution of the property dispute. Preston waited until the attorney stepped away to answer a call. Cedarbridge will not continue negotiating the buyout while you are helping Audrey challenge the project. Oliver looked at him. So the money disappears if I refuse the statement. I said the company wants every dispute resolved. You brought my daughter into it. I brought you an opportunity. Oliver closed a folder. I need time. You have until tomorrow morning. That night he sat at his kitchen table after Lucy went to bed. $250,000 would not make them wealthy. It would pay for college. It would cover years of emergencies. It would protect Lucy if the cafe failed or Oliver became sick. Hannah's photograph stood beside the bills. Oliver tried to imagine explaining the decision to Lucy. When she was older, he could tell her he had accepted because fathers were supposed to protect their children. Or he could tell her he had refused because the offer required him to help a powerful man discredit someone who had trusted him. Neither choice felt simple. The next morning, Preston returned. Oliver placed the unsigned statement on the table. I'm not signing. You may lose the cafe. I know you could lose it even if you fight. I know that. 2. Preston tapped the page describing Lucy's education trust. This protects her future. Oliver looked down at the number 1 last time. Then he pushed the folder away. I can't tell Lucy the truth matters and change my mind when the check gets big enough. Preston collected the documents then. Harbor Row moves forward without you. After he left, Oliver wrote down the time, the attorney's name, and everything Preston had said. The proposed agreements were later sent electronically to the tenant support attorney who represented Oliver at the upcoming hearing. Oliver placed the copies in front of Audrey. Why does Preston need me to make you look unreliable? Audrey read the documents. Because he knows the internal records are beginning to connect him to the contractors. No more small answers. Audrey looked toward the kitchen. Lucy was nearby. She folded her hands. I founded Cedarbridge with 2 partners 14 years ago. Oliver did not move. I control 62% of the voting shares. You control the company. Yes, the company tried to remove us. Yes, Oliver's voice remained low. And the first night, why were you sitting outside? Audrey looked at Lucy, then back at him. I chose Church Street because it was crowded. I wanted to see whether people would stop for someone they believed had nothing. You were testing strangers for 2 hours. That was the plan. Were you really stranded that night? Lucy asked. Audrey answered her directly. Yes. The secure apartment I was supposed to use had been entered. Marcus could not reach me safely before the roads worsened. But you weren't poor, no. You could have gotten another place later. Yes, Lucy held the cans repaired rabbit against her chest. Then, why did you stay upstairs the first 2 nights? I needed somewhere safe after that. I stayed because Harbor Row was part of my company, and I needed to understand what was happening here. You should have told Dad. Yes. Audrey did not tell Lucy. She had wanted to see whether Oliver's kindness would last. That had never been the reason she stayed. The experiment had ended the moment he recognized her. What continued afterward was fear, secrecy, and an investigation she had allowed to enter his home without telling him enough. Oliver looked toward the ceiling. You let us think the coat and the bag were your whole life. I did. Why? Because people change when they know what I own. That may be true. He glanced toward Lucy. But you decided for us before giving us a chance. Audrey placed the studio key on the table. I was wrong. She did not add an excuse. The secure apartment is ready. I'll leave today. Oliver nodded. That is probably best. Lucy looked down at the rabbit. Audrey stopped beside her. Before leaving, I'm sorry. Lucy did not answer. Audrey walked out through the front door. A plain sedan pulled to the curb. Marcus was driving. Oliver watched her get inside. She had genuinely needed a safe room on the night they met, but she had never been powerless. The difference mattered. Over the next 4 days, Audrey worked with Cedarbridge's independent committee. Because Preston had been her fiancé, she could not simply remove him and expect every decision to survive a legal challenge outside. Counsel preserved records and reviewed the contractor payments. Oliver's evidence mattered because it had not come from Audrey. The fire marshal's report, the maintenance records, the stop work order, the proposed settlement, the resident's testimony. The city hearing had been scheduled weeks earlier for 6 o'clock in the evening. Lucy attended after school and sat beside Mrs. Keller in the packed municipal hall. Cedarbridge began with a polished video. It showed glass apartments, new shops, and young professionals drinking coffee beneath trees that did not yet exist. It promised jobs and renewal. It did not show the 18 families living in Harbor Row. Oliver approached the public microphone with a binder prepared by the tenant support attorney. He spoke only about what he knew. He explained the increasing lease offers, the repeated inspection notices, the contractor footage, the boiler exhaust, and the work that continued after the stop order. Then he described the proposed settlement. Preston's attorney objected. Whenever Oliver moved beyond his direct knowledge, Oliver stayed with the facts. He did not call Preston a criminal. He did not claim anyone had intended to poison the residents. He said Cedarbridge offered money for Lucy's future while asking him to sign a statement that would weaken Audrey's credibility. When Preston spoke, he remained controlled. Mr. Grant is grieving the possible loss of a business connected to his late wife. His feelings are understandable. They are not a redevelopment plan. Oliver waited for permission to respond. Preston continued. He also allowed a woman he had not seen in 20 years to live above his cafe. His judgment has been influenced by a personal relationship. Oliver returned to the microphone. I verified her name. I did not verify everything she was keeping from me. He looked briefly toward Lucy. That was my mistake. The room grew quieter, but my mistake did not remove the boiler exhaust. It did not begin work before approval, and it did not put Mrs. Keller in an ambulance. Preston turned toward the planning panel. Harbor Row will improve life in this neighborhood. Mrs. Keller approached the public microphone with several pages of notes. She began reading a paragraph about relocation assistance, then lost her place among the legal language. Lucy stood beside her. If this is supposed to help the people who live here, she asked quietly, why does Mrs. Keller have to leave? Mrs. Keller looked down at her. Then she faced the panel. That is what I've been trying to ask. The chairwoman called Audrey's name. Audrey entered from the rear of the hall in a dark navy suit. There was no convoy and no display of wealth. She walked to the witness table and placed certified corporate records before the clerk. My name is Audrey Bell Carlisle. She paused. I founded Cedarbridge Development Group. Reporters in the back row began typing. I hold 62% of its voting shares. Recent private valuations placed Audrey's interest in Cedarbridge at more than $2 billion. The woman Oliver had found beneath the cafe awning was a billionaire. Counsel for Cedarbridge's independent committee stood beside her. The committee had approved an emergency resolution that afternoon. Cedarbridge withdrew its current demolition application. Preston no longer had authority to represent the company on Harbor Row. All project records were under preservation order. Demolition and tenant relocation activity would remain suspended during the audit. Any future application would have to begin the city's public review process again. Preston remained seated beside his attorney. He did not confess or explain himself. He began fighting to keep what remained of his position. Audrey faced the residents. This happened inside a company I built. She took a breath. I did not know every order Preston or Cole gave, but I was responsible for the system that allowed complaints to be ignored. Then she looked at Oliver and Lucy. Oliver helped me. Before he knew what I owned, I also allowed him and his daughter to believe I had fewer choices than I did. She did not describe it as an experiment anymore. It was wrong. Lucy watched her without smiling. Audrey continued. The evidence that stopped this project did not come from my money. It came from a cafe owner who kept records, a fire department that did its job, and residents who refused to be pushed aside. The panel accepted Cedarbridge's withdrawal and closed the current application. Harbor Row could not proceed unless the company started the process again under a new plan. Outside the hall, reporters surrounded Audrey. She walked past them toward Oliver. I can protect the cafe, she said. Protect the tenants first. I will, and do it in a way that does not depend on whether they trust you personally. Audrey nodded. Oliver glanced toward Lucy. Trust is going to take longer. I know the investigation lasted more than a year. Outside, auditors uncovered payments routed through contractors connected to Preston, altered project records, and attempts to conceal documents after the boiler incident. Cedarbridge's board removed Preston. Prosecutors later charged him with financial fraud and obstruction. He accepted a plea agreement, repaid the money connected to the scheme, and received a prison sentence at sentencing. Preston admitted that he had treated people like transactions for so long that he no longer recognized when he was doing it. The admission did not erase the damage. Cole cooperated with investigators, but still lost his job and faced civil claims from Harbor Row residents. At a community meeting, he apologized to Mrs. Keller. She listened. I hear you. She said trust will take longer. Audrey changed Cedarbridge before asking Oliver or Lucy for anything. The company transferred Harbor Row into an independently governed community land trust. The 18 families received long-term rental protections and elected representatives to the trust's board. Bluebird Corner Cafe received a 15-year lease at a rate set through an independent appraisal. Oliver refused a personal payment from Audrey. He accepted only a low-interest renovation loan available to every qualifying small business in the district. Audrey did not return to the studio for months. She came to the cafe only as a customer. She entered through the front door. She paid for her coffee. She did not bring Lucy expensive gifts. Sometimes Lucy spoke to her. Sometimes she did not. Audrey accepted both. 14 months after the hearing, Lucy carried a new painting upstairs to Hannah's old studio. Oliver had reopened the room for community art classes twice a week. Hannah's landscape still hung on one wall. Lucy placed her own painting beside it. It showed Bluebird Corner beneath a bright sky. Oliver stood near the door. Lucy stood beside him. A third figure waited a little farther away. Audrey stopped at the threshold. She did not enter. Lucy searched through the toolbox, found a small nail, and held it toward her. You can hold this. Audrey took it carefully. It was not complete forgiveness. It was a beginning. Oliver appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Breakfast is ready. Lucy headed down first. Audrey remained in the doorway. Oliver looked at her. You coming? Are you asking me as a customer? No. Audrey waited. Oliver glanced at Lucy's painting beside Hannah's. I'm asking Audrey for once. There was no title, no disguise, and no test hidden inside the name. Audrey stepped into the room only after Oliver moved aside. Was Oliver right to refuse the money, even when it could have secured Lucy's future? And did Audrey deserve the chance to earn back their trust after hiding the truth? Tell us what you think and where you're watching from if this story reminded you that dignity should never depend on wealth. Like the video, share it with someone who still believes kindness matters, and subscribe to Dad Soul Stories. And if you believe a quiet father should never have to sell his principles to protect his child, the next story is waiting on your screen.